Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jaya Gauranitai, Jai Gauranitai. Jaya Jagannath, Jai Jagannatha, Baladeva, Jai Shri Subhadra. Jayo Radha Ballabha Shri Radhe. Jayo Radha Ballabha Shri Radhe. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य स्तोत्रशत श्री श्रीमद चरणारविंद भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय, नामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से गौर श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Granthraj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 1, verse number 33. We will do 2 verses today, 33 and 34. Matra swasreya vaschedyo. Matra swasreya vaschedyo. Danta vakrascha pandava. Danta vakrascha pandava. Parshada pravaro Vishnur. Parshada pravaro Vishnur. Viprashapat paduchyate uchyato. Viprashapat paducyato. Matra swashreya vaschedyo. Danta vakrascha pandava. Parshada pravaro Vishnur. Viprashapat paducyato. Matra swashreya vaschedyo. Danta vakrascha pandava. Parshada pravaro Vishnur. Viprashapat paducyato. Matra swashreya vaschedyo. Danta vakrascha pandava. Parshada pravaro Vishnu. Matra swashreya vaschedyo. Danta vakrascha pandava. Parshada pravaro Vishnu. Viprashapat paducyato. Matra swashreya Danta vakrascha pandava. Parshada pravaro Vishnu. Mataji. Matra swashreya vaschedyo. Danta vakrascha pandava. Parshada pravaro Vishnu. Viprashapat paducyato. Matra swashreya vaschedyo. Danta vakrascha pandava. Parshada pravaro Vishnu. Viprashapat paducyato. What would meaning? Matra swashreya. The son of mother's sister. Shishupal. Va, your. Chaitya, King Shishupal. Dantavakraha, Dantavakra. Cha, and. Pandava, O Pandava. Parshada Pravaro, two exalted attendants. Vishnoho of Vishnu, Vipra by Brahmanas, Shapat because of a curse, Pada from their position in Vaikuntha, Chutav fallen. Translation. Narad Muni continued, O best of the Pandavas, your two cousins Shishupal and Dantavakra, the sons of your maternal aunt, were formerly associates of Lord Vishnu. But because they were cursed by Brahmanas, they fell from Vaikuntha to this material world. You can repeat the translation. Narad Muni continued, O best of the Pandavas, your two cousins, Shishupal and Dantavakra, the sons of your maternal aunt, were formerly associates of Lord Vishnu. But because they were cursed by Brahmanas, they fell from Vaikuntha to this material world. It is a very short purport. Shishupal and Dantavakra were not ordinary demons. They were formerly personal associates of Lord Vishnu. They apparently fell to this material world, but actually they came to assist the Supreme Personality of Godhead by nourishing His pastimes within this world. So I'll read the next verse and translation and purport. Shri Yudhisthira Uvacha Kidrasa Kasya Vasapo Hari Dasabhimarshanaha Ashraddheya Ivabhati Hare Rekanti Nam Bhavaha. Maharaj Yudhisthira inquired, what kind of great curse could affect even liberated Vishnu Bhaktas? And what sort of person could curse even the Lord's associates? For unflinching devotees of the Lord to fall again to this material world is impossible. I cannot believe this. Purport to that verse. In Bhagavad Gita 8:16, the Lord clearly states, Mam upetya tu kaunteya punarjanmana vidyate. One who is purified of material contamination and returns home back to Godhead does not return to this material world. Elsewhere in Bhagavad Gita 4.9, Krishna says, Janma karma chame divyam evam yoveti tattvataha tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti suarjunaha. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. Maharaj Yudhisthira therefore was surprised that a pure devotee could return to this material world. This is certainly a very important question. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Śrīmad Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gaurvani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine. Hare Krishna. So very specific topic is coming to an end in this chapter. where the topic of Shishupal and his intense absorption in Krishna, even though with hatred, with enmity, that particular, this verse number 33 is finishing that topic. And then Yudhisthira Maharaj in the verse number 34 inquires out of his astonishment a different topic that will lead to the further chapters of Bhagavatam. So the topic of why Shishupal had, what is the cause of his hatred of Shishupal for the Supreme Lord is just coming. Previously we heard because of his hatred he became successful. But what caused that hatred is the further discussion. So now it's amazing how this first chapter is taking a shape, because now once the explanation of Shishupal's hatred is given by his spiritual master, Sukadeva Goswami. Here, because the multiple stories are going on, he is quoting a discussion between Yudhisthira and Narad Muni. And within that discussion, now Yudhisthira Maharaj is very curious, because when Narad Muni is going to explain him the curse which Jaya and Vijaya got, the doorkeepers of Vaikuntha planet, and how 3 births as a demon they will take, which we all have heard few times. As first one is Hiranyakashipu, Hiranyaksh, then the second life is Ravana and Kumbhakaran, and the third birth they take is Shishupal and Dantavakra, which we were discussing now. So then Yudhisthira Maharaj, out of hearing the whole discussion, the whole 3 appearances of the Lord and the purposes he achieves, suddenly asks, when he hears about Prahlad and Narsingadev, his question is, why so much hatred Hiranyakashipu had for Prahlad? And that's where this chapter is going to end, and we'll see how amazing Narsinga Leela will be discussed further. So he asks 2 questions. Why so much hatred a father has for son, Hiranyakashipu has for Prahlad? And then what made Prahlad such a great devotee of Lord Vishnu or Lord Krishna? And that will open the whole story of Prahlad Narsingha and that amazing pastime. So it's amazing how it's an art to ask relevant questions, because every relevant question becomes the reason for deliverance of many. Sometimes when we are giving a class and we say, anyone has any question towards the end, maybe 1 or 2 people will ask, or maybe no one will ask. But after the class, people come and they ask some questions. So, which is nice, they want to clear their doubts. So sometimes the question is so good that we have to tell them, if you would have asked in the class, it could have helped us as a speaker, of course, because it's helping us now also. But it could have helped many who would hear this answer, because it is a very relevant inquiry. This inquiry is pretty much a question which everyone will have, it's just not coming to the forefront. So similarly are these questions which are opening the doors for perfection to all those who are going to hear it. So here, currently, right where we are right now in this verse, where Shishupal and Dantavakra stories get almost on a conclusion, it's interesting if you see the relationships mentioned here. Narad Muni is telling Yudhisthira, oh you Pandava, Shishupal is also your cousin. So Krishna, the relationship Krishna had with Pandavas is exactly the relationship he had with Shishupal also. But see the difference, one is a devotee, one was a outright enemy, just wanted to kill, wanted to just blaspheme. To a degree that the first word this person Shishupal spoke, not mummy, papa, was abusing Krishna. These are the first words coming out of this person's mouth, to speak ill about Krishna. So, Shishupal is son of King Dhamaghosh and Shrutashubha. Now this woman Shrutashubha is sister of Vasudev and Kunti. That means Shishupal's mother and Yudhishthira's mother are sisters. Because that's how Krishna, whose father is their brother Vasudeva, who is brother of Shishupal's mother and who's brother of Pandava's mother, has the same relationship. So these are brother-sister story going on, basically. So that's their relationship. Very similar, very exactly same relationship Krishna had with both of them. So Jiva Goswami gives 2 specific reasons, because that's going to lead to astonishment shown by Yudhishthira Maharaj in next verse number 34. So Jiva Goswami gives 2 specific reasons why Jaya Vijay fell from the spiritual world. Anyone knows these 2 specific reasons? Because a Vaikuntha resident who is eternally liberated can't come have a material body, right? And this is the astonishment. If you see the verse number 34, if you carefully read the verse, it's amazing. The word used in the verse is the Sanskrit. If you see, if you can check your phones also, it'll be nice. The word used is verse number 34. Ashraddhaya. Anyone knows the meaning of word Shraddha? Faith. Ashraddhaya means no faith. But Prabhupada is translating Ashraddhaya as incredible, not no faith. Why? Because Yudhishthira Maharaj has faith. Yudhishthira Maharaj, while asking this question to his spiritual master, that how is it possible that anyone from spiritual world can fall and come to material world and have a material body? So the word used in the verse Sanskrit is Ashraddhaya. He has this doubt, but this is more of an astonishment and the feeling of how is it really possible? But it's not from the point of view of a neophyte having a doubt on the activities of the Supreme Lord and his devotee, where this faithlessness comes in Yudhishthira Maharaj. So the 2 reasons. Now, if other people can tell, what are the 2 reasons Jaya Vijay came down? Yes. Correct. Lord wanted some extraordinary, powerful opponent to fight, and that can only be the residents of the Vaikuntha planet. Other reason? Someone else? Anyone wants to guess? Any second reason? Otherwise, Nikesh Prabhu can speak. Yes. No. So Jiva Goswami gives these 2 reasons. One is, of course, they were extraordinary, powerful demons. They will become as residents of the spiritual world, and Lord will fulfill His desire. But there's a second reason also He gives. So there's a story where Mother Lakshmi wanted to see the Lord, and Jaya Vijay as doorkeepers stopped her from entering the abode of the Lord because the Lord was resting. And Mother Lakshmi got so upset with Jaya Vijay that how can you stop me from entering Vaikuntha? And she had that feeling of within her heart. So one of the Jiva Goswami explains basically that Lord wanted to please Mother Lakshmi by arranging or orchestrating someone else to curse Jaya Vijay to come to the material world, basically to get because Mother Lakshmi had that feeling still within her heart that how can they stop me? So she didn't curse, she didn't say anything, but to please her, Lord did that. So one of the sannyasi, while explaining this point, he was saying that Lord didn't want to appear as a henpecked husband, so he himself didn't curse, but he arranged that someone else will curse. Someone else will curse Jaya and Vijay, and they come down. So these were the 2 reasons mentioned. And of course, we see how amazing the Leela will happen, where their consciousness was hardly affected in terms of the remembrance of the Lord. The intense remembrance Jaya and Vijaya had, as demons also, is Narad Muni in the previous verse, out of his humility, is practically glorifying that remembrance. Someone asked me the other day, they just came to the temple, they just saw the verse written. So I didn't see the verse till then. So that devotee asked me, Prabhu, how is it possible that a devotee is inferior to someone who has enmity towards the Lord? I think verse number 26 to 27 was there, where Narad Muni is glorifying that absorption in enmity he had towards the Lord is superior to devotional service. The verse is like that. So that devotee just came to the temple, read this verse, maybe called me later. Bro, how is it possible? How is it possible? How is it possible? But Prabhupada in that purport very specifically mentions this is the humility of Narad Muni, where he's not saying that enmity is superior to devotional service, but the absorption for the Lord is very superior. And so this is the greatness of these demons also, who are, of course, the residents of Vaikuntha planet. So Yudhisthira Maharaj is showing a doubt which is not of faithlessness, but this doubt is of astonishment, which is in verse number 34. That how is it possible? How is that actually possible? Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his translation actually uses the word incredible. When he's translating ashraddheya, not as faithlessness, because that's Yudhisthira Maharaj's qualification. But the qualification of Yudhisthira Maharaj is such that even though he had genuine inquiry, his inquiry was not resolved by his own mental speculation. He had the right person to ask this question to, which was Narad Muni, his spiritual master. And that brings all success in spiritual life. Everyone has inquiries in their life, but the perfection depends on whom you're asking and in what mood. So if the right question is asked in the right attitude to basically apply the solution, all success is guaranteed. And that's exactly the attitude which is a Vaikuntha attitude. Yudhisthira Maharaj is showing in this verse, and further the next verse also will further, he'll continue with this doubt, talking about how actually does it work. Because this question we have all come across, for us also. Here we are talking about the residents of the spiritual world, but for us also this question has been asked a lot in ISKCON. And this can be a speed breaker question for many people, that how we, being the residents in the spiritual world once, can fall to the material world. Isn't it, this question has asked so many times, how can we come to the material world? How can soul fall down to the material world? And then, Prabhupada gives few varieties of answers, but one specific answer Srila Prabhupada gives is, don't focus on why you came. Focus on now how you can go back, instead of worrying why you came, because that's not very intelligent. In different occasions, Srila Prabhupada has given many other answers also, that when you go back, you ask Krishna only why you came back to this material world. But the point was very specifically clear, that don't let this inquiry become a stumbling block in one's practice of spiritual life. That how can me, a spirit soul, fall into this material creation? Because in the purport to next verse, verse number 34, Srila Prabhupada quotes 2 shlokas where he confirms that once attained the spiritual world, no one falls back again. Mam upetya tu kaunteya punar janma na vidyate. Anyone who has once gone to the spiritual world, no more return from the spiritual world. And then Srila Prabhupada in that same verse quotes another, it's in the same purport, quotes another verse, very famous shloka of Bhagavad Gita 4.9. Janma karma chame divyam evam yoveti tattvata tektva deham punar janma naiti mam eti so Arjuna. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, takes his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. So, if we see this verse, it actually appears that just by knowing Krishna's birth and his activities, there is no more birth again. And that can raise further questions that how just by knowing Krishna's appearance and his activities, you just don't take birth again. So in that purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, yes, it is that simple. Srila Prabhupada writes that, okay, someone who is a following karma yoga, jnana yoga or ashtanga yoga, it is very difficult to get liberated. It's a very troublesome path to get liberated. But for a devotee, because they just simply understand Krishna's birth and his activities, they're liberated. And then he quotes reference to that. He quotes from Shvetashvatara Upanishad. Tam eva viditvati mrityumeti nanya pantha vidyate yanya. One can attain the perfect stage of liberation from birth and death simply by knowing the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There is no other way to achieve this perfection. Just by simply knowing the Supreme Lord. So I was thinking about it, that how just by knowing, automatically one attains perfection. Just by knowing something. Because if you, honestly, with all sincerity, with all, with the right attitude, from the right source, if you actually know about the Supreme Lord, his activities, his appearance, the purpose of his appearance, then naturally there will be an inclination to develop relationship with him. Naturally there will be a desire to come closer to him. Naturally there will be a desire to develop devotion for him. And that we see materially also when we find out something about a great celebrity, a great personality, and when we know about their activities and we hear they are in the town or they are in our neighborhood, we want to go and see them. We want to go and somehow get connected to them. If given a chance. Of course, we all know it's very difficult. But if given a chance, people just go crazy. People will go to any extent just to go and shake hands. Because they've heard the greatness of that person. What makes them so crazy to just go and take a selfie? Because they've heard and seen the greatness of that person. Which is, from material point of view, if you see, means, if you compare that with the greatness of the Supreme Lord, who is the creator of practically the whole cosmos, material and spiritual world together, in which there are tiny ants, which are popular tiny ants, very tiny personalities who are very popular in this material world. People go to any extent, they spend any amount of money, if given a chance to spend a day with a celebrity or just to take a selfie. Now, if someone honestly understands the greatness of the Supreme Lord, his appearance, his activities, in truth, to what extent the devotee will go to develop relationship with the Lord? It will be a very automatic response. It will be a very automatic desire which all living entities will have. And then naturally this perfection is given. Now, to hear these statements may appear too fantastic to believe in. In that same purport, Srila Prabhupada says, he who accepts this truth on the strength of the authority of the Vedas and of the Supreme Personality of Godhead does not waste time in philosophical speculation, but attains the highest perfection stage of liberation. Simply by accepting this truth on faith, one can, without a doubt, attain liberation. Just simply by accepting this on faith. The activities and the appearance of the Supreme Lord is completely transcendental. There are so many different forms of the Supreme Lord are there. For so many different reasons, the Supreme Lord appears in different forms to attract all living entities. If just by knowing these forms and the personality of the Godhead, Prabhupada says, simply just by knowing one attains liberation, because there will be an automatic response once we know about the Supreme Lord. So knowing the greatness of the Supreme Lord, Yudhisthira Maharaj is showing his astonishment that someone who is a resident of Vaikuntha planet, for them to fall down and have a material body is unheard of. Yudhishthira's first time in his life he is experiencing, and that's why he's very astonished. He has this doubt. First time he's even hearing a thing like that a resident of the spiritual world can come down. We hear this question quite often, and for especially new devotees, this doubt is very common that even Krishna left his body when he was killed by the hunter in the forest. So, yesterday one devotee asked me, Govind Darshan Prabhu, he's in US now, he sent me a video. So this guy is telling that when Krishna was shot by the arrow in the feet, so then Krishna's body was cremated by the family members, he was burned. His heart, because that person is saying, his heart did not burn because he is Vishnu. So his heart, through the channel of the river, went to Jagannath Puri, and that heart is in the form of Jagannath now. In the body of Jagannath, that heart is replaced. When Navakalevaram happens, the new form of Jagannath is carved, that heart is placed in that form of Jagannath. So he said, Prabhu, what is your opinion on this? Because this created a lot of contradiction from what he had heard. So I told him, yeah, if you take both the stories separately, they both are like in the Chronicles of Jagannath, in Jagannath Puri, it is said that yes, every time when the new form of Jagannath is carved, the heart is moved from one body, from previous form of the Jagannath to the new form, because I think every 12 or 14 years, that previous form of Jagannath is replaced with a new form. So the pujari blindfolded goes and searches for a suitable tree from which Jagannath is carved, and this previous form is kept under the ground, and the heart is taken from the previous form, put in the new form. I said, yeah, I have also heard that in Jagannath Puri that is there. And yes, Krishna also left his body to even further confuse the atheist. But then the connection between the two, and because he is Vishnu, body burnt, but heart did not burn, this sounded very, very odd to both of us. that because he is Vishnu, his heart didn't burn, but his body burned. Why? Because there are many examples of pure devotees of the Supreme Lord who went back to the spiritual world with the self-same body. When the devotee of the Lord goes back home, back to God, with the self-same body which is so spiritualized, then the Lord itself has a material body which is cremated, and then the soul of the Lord goes back to the spiritual world. Now this concept itself appears a little too contradictory. We hear the story of Mirabai. In her self-same body, she entered the deity of Krishna. We hear the story of Sant Tukaram. In front of his whole village, he sat on the Vaikuntha plain and went back to Godhead. Even if we take Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as a devotee, not a Supreme Lord, which he is, he also entered in his self-same body in the deity of Tota Gopinath in Jagannath Puri. But whom they are devotee of, he has a material body, he leaves his body, and then the soul goes back to the Vaikuntha. This is very difficult for the devotees to adjust with. Why? Because there is no difference between the soul of the Lord and the body of the Lord. There is no difference. He is spiritual. But to confuse the atheist, Lord can do many things. So because of all this understanding, Yudhisthira Maharaj being a pure Vaishnava, having all this understanding, this question is coming very strongly. That how is it possible? And that's why his question is glorified, that it's a very relevant question. It's a very genuine question. How is it possible for a Vaikuntha resident to fall down? So in further verses, this is what will come. And then the whole amazing pastime of Narsingha and Prahlad's Leela will be unfolded. So these were a few of the points I just thought we'll discuss from these two verses. Hare Krishna. Is there any question or comment? Yes, Mataji.
That Jaya and Vijaya came down to the material world. You said that Lord Krishna had the will to fight with them. So my question is, they didn't do any offense, so they still came down. So did they do any offense that they still had to come down?
Apparently they did, because they stopped the four sons of Brahma, Chatushkumar, from entering the Vaikuntha planet. Now these four kids may appear as naked young boys trying to just barge into someone's residence, but actually they are not. They are even elder to Marichi, who is known as the very elder son of Brahma. So they are the firstborn sons of Brahma. So they are not just young kids who are just flocking around, moving around, and they want to do what they want to do, and no one should stop them, and they got angry and cursed him. No, they were very qualified to enter the Vaikuntha planet. Jaya stopped them. But the reason why the Supreme Lord arranged this to happen were these two reasons Jiva Goswami gives. One was Lord had a desire to have a battle, to experience his fighting skills, to express his fighting skills, and no one can compete with the Lord. It has to be a resident of Vaikuntha planet. So now the residents of Vaikuntha planet with extraordinary powerful, as an extraordinary powerful demon, they appear and they give challenge to the Lord. So that's basically the key reason. So externally, if you see, yes, it is an offense, but it was not such a big offense that you curse someone to leave Vaikuntha planet. So that's why these two reasons are given, that yes, Lord planned it through the four Kumaras. And that's why the second reason which he gives is that Lord didn't want it to curse or punish them directly for disturbing Lakshmi Devi, but he still wanted to please Lakshmi, who was actually disturbed because Jaya stopped her also from entering the Vaikuntha when he was sleeping. So he did. He is a Supreme Lord, There is most of the activities, if you see, of the Supreme Lord, if you carefully analyze, at least 3 to 4 reasons are there for any action he does, and much more than that. Hardly any activity we see which has a single reason of the Lord. He can do it. When we do something, mostly we have just one reason because of our limitations. But the Lord can do an activity for many, many reasons, and he can resolve many unsolved equations together. That's the power of the Supreme Lord. Is it okay?
And when we go to the spiritual world, we're like, can Lord Krishna arrange for us to come to the material world like demons and like fight with him?
Oh, okay. The question is, if we go to the spiritual world, will Lord Krishna arrange for us also to come to the material world and fight with him? He is independent Lord. If he desires so, yes, he will do it. But at most likely may not happen. But he is independent Lord, it can happen. If you as a perfected spiritual being express your desire, he may fulfill your desire. If you want to have a battle with Krishna, so in some or the other way he'll arrange it. But means he's independent, he can do what he wants. Is it okay?
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Is there anything else? Fighting with Krishna? Yeah. No, she wants to have a battle with Krishna, that's what.
In one sense, we're in the spiritual world as well as in the material world. So you've already got it.
Yeah.
And the more you chant Hare Krishna and act on Krishna's behalf, the more you're in the spiritual world, all the while still being in the material world.
Yes. But it's hard to have a fight with Krishna in this particular body. We try to fight with him with our atheistic mentalities. People do try to give a good fight to Krishna. I will prove you dead. But it doesn't work very, very well. Anything else? Prabhuji.
That just underlines the special relationship that that Lord Vishnu has with Jaya and Vijaya.
Yes.
And they're pretty much eternally liberated souls.
Yes.
right?
Yes, Prabhu.
Whereas we're not.
Hmm.
And we can't ever hope to take on Prabhupada warns us that we shouldn't see ourselves as ever being able to become like the eternally liberated Nitya-Siddha personalities. We can follow in their footsteps, but we can never become them. So we can never become like Jaya and Vijaya, because we have a different status.
Okay. Yes, Prabhu. Take the mic.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhu, we learned that Janma Karma Chame Divyam, that understanding the activities of Supreme Lord liberates is enough to liberate us. So for that also we should have to have mercy of the Lord, mercy of the devotees, shelter of the devotees. So being a new person understanding Krishna, new white devotee, how to understand that we have that, or we are getting that mercy, or we are started knowing about Krishna, and then we can.
So the question is, to understand the activities and the appearance of the Lord, we need mercy of Krishna and his devotees. So how to understand that we are getting the mercy of Krishna and his devotees?
Like, how are we progressing in...
how to understand how are we progressing?
Scripture says that, understanding Supreme Lord itself is so great and it's so vast that...
Yes.
In that sense.
So, if someone is naturally... if someone is actually progressing in spiritual life, there are many symptoms that person will experience. And amongst the many symptoms, the first symptom is there is a natural happiness within the heart one experiences. There is a natural satisfaction one experiences within the heart, and that happiness and satisfaction within the heart reflects externally in a way that one is not aiming very hard to become a material success. So one is not working very hard to become a material success, rather the activities, external material activities, are more of just doing your duty to maintain the body and soul together. Because we are living in this world, we have relationships, we have a body to maintain. But if someone is really experiencing spiritual upliftment, then the aim and the goal of life turns very internal, where the person is very eager to continue and to perfect one's spiritual life. So this is one of the symptoms that comes to my mind. How do you actually see whether spiritually we are progressing or not? And how much, you've seen that seesaw? So one side is spiritual life, one side is material life. So somehow this swing works only in a way that if one thing goes up, other has to come down. So there is there's a very common understanding which says there is no stagnancy in spiritual practice. Either one is going towards Krishna or one is going away from Krishna. There is no platform where you just stay stable. Either one is moving towards Krishna, or because of one's activities, one is going away from Krishna. So, and that's how this swing is seesaw. Either of course, the swing can remain in one position, but either if you're spiritually advancing, your material desires, you must experience that I am getting free from this fire of material desires, So, and that experience practically all devotees, they do get based on how much they're advancing. And that's why one should not be disappointed when one sees, the destination is so far. The destination is so far that will I be able to reach it? One should just look back and see how far I have already come. So if Krishna has been kind, devotees have been kind and merciful enough to bring me so far, that further remaining journey will also be completed. But if someone is too puffed up, too much, one feels that I am really progressing nicely, then one should look forward that it is very far. Then it humbles one down. That okay, means even though I think I am very spiritually advanced, but there is a lot to be gained. So I think it's good to have that proper analysis, the understanding. The other day in ashram we were just discussing, Gopavandishpu was mentioning, it's good to just reflect, sit down, reflect on one's own life, how much we have actually progressed, where we are at in our spiritual lives, in our spiritual practices, in our sadhana, in our seva, in our general reading, day-to-day activities. Because once we analyze, this is exactly where we'll know in our journey where we are at. No one from outside can tell us much. There's only limited information outside people can give if they really see some drastic mistake one is doing. But mostly it's a game which is within, which has to be resolved. And for that, self-reflection is very healthy. Is that okay? Yes.
I think in our daily walks of life, when we are approached by a lot of stimulus or stimuli, and during our spiritual progress path, our responses to these stimuli are quite aggressive initially. And when we progress further, like in terms of all those vices which we have, like kama, krodha, lobh, moh, ahankara. So in all these vicious circles, our responses as we progress in the spiritual life will diminish, and they will bring you down to the ground level, to the level of humility basically. So that is another way of checking up on your own self internally. Oh, this is an opportunity for me to get angry. How much anger did I build in on this stimulus? And that will tell you immediately as to have you progressed or not.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. Good point. Oh, we want to say something. There.
I'm not sure if I heard you correctly, but the notion that our spiritual life goes up and our material life goes down, and vice versa, is perhaps not a accurate description of what happens in life, because we see that a devotee may be making spiritual advancement, but also being materially prosperous, and there's nothing wrong with that. And so they're not directly related, actually. You know, that your material life progresses and therefore your spiritual life regresses. They can both be progressive at the same time. And we see that in the example of devotees like Ambarish Maharaj, who's extraordinarily wealthy and influential from the apparently material perspective, but actually is a great devotee because he understands that, and this is a pivotal or a key point of Rupa Goswami's philosophy and how Prabhupada presents Rupa Goswami, and that Rupa Goswami's renunciation. And renunciation is where one's spiritual advancement gives the perception, or not the perception, gives the vision of everything belonging to Krishna and even myself. And so whatever wealth I have, whatever influence I have, ultimately I'm the custodian of what is Krishna's property, right? And so the spiritual advancement of the devotee is to see whatever they have. You know, you may have nothing, okay, that's Krishna's arrangement, but I may be very wealthy, but I use that in Krishna's service. And so, having wealth is not an obstacle for making spiritual advancement, right?
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes people think, oh no, you become a Hare Krishna, you've got to give everything up. Don't do it, right? Whereas spiritual advancement gives the devotee the opportunity to see everything with detachment, understanding that I'm the proprietor, I'm the custodian of the proprietor's property, which is Krishna's, and he's able to then use it in Krishna's service. So, you know, and we see also an extension of that in the Nectar of Instruction, where the first verse says that one has to, what is it? Vacho, Vega, Manasakro. We're going to be pushed by different urges,
Yeah.
right? Calm, crowd, low, etc. So what's the remedy? And the remedy is not to give it up, because you can't, actually. You know, we're always going to be pushed by who we are, and that's the nature of being for the soul, right? To be pushed, right? So what's the remedy? And Prabhupada says, based on Rupa Goswami's instructions, is that we use those urges, but we engage them in Krishna's service, right?
Yeah.
So we have a desire. The desire is to please Krishna ultimately. So we, you know, Prabhupada talks about dovetailing our desires with Krishna's. So this is a subtle point of our philosophy, is that we don't actually give up anything. In fact, Prabhupada says you can't. You can't. The living entity is always a possessor. There's got to be a possessor of something, right? And which is interesting. Otherwise, if you don't have anything, you're nothing, which we're not. But he makes a point that we give up in spiritual life. You know, we give up the lower taste for the higher taste.
Yes.
Right? And that higher taste is working under Krishna's direction, working under the direction of the spiritual master, and gradually purifying those urges, right? Urge to speak, the mind's demands, the belly, the tongue, the genitals. We engage all of those urges in activities that are connected with service to Krishna. In that way we make spiritual progress. So even, you know, we used to go on Harinam, and there'd be people that would attack the Harinam party. And I used to get upset because the devotees would fight with them. But then I realised that actually fighting with the demons is what Krishna does. Right? And so it's the proper utility of anger, you know. And so it's not a bad thing. And of course that doesn't mean that we go out looking for fights. But you know, the subtle point is that we as individuals are going to have desires, right? And you can't get rid of them. Krishna says, what is it? What will repression accomplish? You'll still be forced to act. So Rupa Goswami's philosophy and Prabhupada's encouragement is, based on that, is don't try to give up who you are and the urges, because you can't, but you sublimate, you purify them by engaging them in Krishna's service. Which is quite a, you know, that's quite a subtle point. And so for a devotee, sometimes making material advancement is also conducive for them making spiritual advancement. It's not antithetical to making spiritual progress, which is kind of the common idea is make spiritual advancement and then give up everything, right? Or be forced to give up things. Whereas for a devotee, it's whatever I have, I'll use it for Krishna.
Yep.
Which is and of course, you know, we certainly see in the lives of devotees like Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami and Raghunath Das, huge amount of renunciation because of their deep absorption in spiritual, you know, in their Siddha Deha, effectively, right? But at the same time, when people came to Rupa Goswami and offered him wealth or wealth mainly, especially with the example of the salt merchant, you know that story? He wanted assistance and Rupa Goswami gave him the assistance. So then he said, oh, you know, I want to give you wealth, effectively. So what did Rupa Goswami do with that? What did he do with it?
He took it.
He made a big temple for Madan Mohan, right? So when given wealth, a devotee will use it in Krishna's service. He won't just give it, no, we don't want that. Yet we know that Rupa Goswami, like Prabhupada says, Rupa Goswami slept not more than 2 hours a night, right? And lived very, very simply. So for himself, he's quite renounced, but you know, when he was given opulence, he used it in Krishna's service. How's that sound?
Yeah. Thank you.
I don't know whether you were suggesting that.
No, I was speaking more from
the seesaw men.
That was more of internal desire point of view, not the action, not the material or spiritual life point of view. Because as you mentioned, that's our siddhanta. Yukta Viragya is our philosophy. You know, so I was speaking more from the point of view of more internal desire point of view than material or spiritual life. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
It's a fact.
Yeah.
If your spiritual desires go up, your material enjoyment will go down.
Yes. Yeah, that's from that angle.
And of course you're happy, as you pointed out.
Yes, bro.
Susukam kartam avyayam.
Yes, bro.
Right? And then you can use wealth and influence and be comfortable with it and not be disturbed by it, wanting to enjoy it yourself.
Yes, bro. Thank you, bro. Okay. ग्रंथ श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय.